Welcome to the Pink Room, a space for real talk by real women about the real issues of our day.
As minorities, we're not only your day laborers. We're not only the ones that clean your houses or your hotels, right? We are human beings that have capacity to be part of every area of this country.
So the strategy needs to be to get into these political offices.
Every election, every seat, every office.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Teresa, if I would just like to say, I don't consider myself a minority. If the world wants to see us as minorities, because we are actually the majority, but if they want to see us as minorities, then call us the super minority.
There you go. Okay. Yeah.
Decided to post some microaggressions that they were experiencing from their professors.
Wow.
And hearing so many perspectives, they're like, you have to do something. If I have the resource, I'll do well as well. I'll do well just as well as others do. Don't make things easier for me. I just want the resource. That's all. And I think that's the misconception, that they think that we want handouts. We don't want handouts. We just want what the others get. That's it. Give us what you give others, and we will do just as well.
Excellent. Ashley.
As long as you can ensure that one group of people in this country have access to good education,
right,
another group does not have access to adequate education, right, you basically guarantee that the group that has less access to good education, then remain the sickest people in our system. And so you have the conflation of several policies, or the absence of policies, that basically create and sustain the perfect storm in this country.
That's not where your affirmation is going to come from.
Right.
Humans fail us all the time. It is not in someone else. You can't find in someone else what you cannot find first within yourself. And what entryways were there for someone else to come in and feed you false narratives? You have to build up those fortresses first. And when I say fortresses, I don't mean walls to block people out. I mean confidence within yourself to know that you can look in the mirror and say to the mirror, Latoya, you're loved. I love you. I love you. You are beautiful.
Start your watch parties. Cast the Pink Room on your HD TVs. Post your comments in the chat. This space is yours too.
Welcome to the Pink Room. We have 3 very important announcements for you today, and we want to ask you at this time to start your watch parties on your Facebook and YouTube pages, and invite other women to come in, and even gentlemen, so that together we might have a very rich conversation. First announcement that we have: on November 13th to 15th, which is actually this weekend, we will be having a convocatoria virtual para mujeres universitarias. This is a virtual convocation for university young women. November 13th to 15th is going to be online. It will be hosted by For Real Women International, but it is sponsored by UNADECA, that's the Adventist University of Central America. If you're interested, there is the link for inscription. We also have it on our Facebook page. We invite you to register, and it's just a $10 fee. Unbelievable. For a full weekend of information, a full weekend of encouragement, a full weekend of inspiration. So we invite you, if you are a young woman who is in college, we invite you to register and join us for this convocation, virtual convocation, that will be starting this Friday right until Sunday noon. We also have an international virtual leadership summit, and this leadership summit takes place January 15th to 18th in the year 2021. And our theme this year is amplifying our voices, change, influence, power. Our early registration ends November 14th, and early registration cost is just $20 for the USA, $10 internationally. Regular registration ends on November 30th. That will be $30 if you live in the USA, $15 if you live internationally. Late registration ends December 30th, and the cost will be $40 if you live in the USA, $20 if you live in the country outside of the United States. And January 10th will be our extended late registration. The cost will be $50 if you live in the USA, $50 also if you live in any countries outside of the USA. This is an annual convocation that we have, an annual leadership summit. We've been having this summit for the past 4 years. We have 100 dedicated women who come together, get trained and inspired to go out into their communities to do grassroots work. If you want to be one of these women, we invite you to join us on January 15th to 18th, and please make sure that you register. You can register at our website. That's www.4rwi.org. As you can see, the earlier you register, the most inexpensive and cheaper it is for your pocket. So we invite you to register and bring a friend along also. Then we also have a book. One of our For Real women has penned some of her most painful and deeply personal experiences in a book entitled I Will Rescue You. I'm holding my own copy in my hands. It's by Pastor Latoya Yandia Wright. The book is phenomenal. The book is a great inspirational tool to start your day, to end your day. Latoya has been on our show before. She speaks clearly like a real woman. She shares her story as it is. And she shares in this particular book where she gets her inspiration and how her connection to a higher power, God, helped her to be able to reach to the heights that she is today. It's just $10.99. You can go to her website. That's www.latoyawright.com, and you can order this book. And I want to invite you to don't only order the book for yourself, order a couple copies and share them with your friends. I have ordered some copies myself that I'm going to be sharing with friends during Christmas. I invite you to do the same and support this, not only the cause, but also help women to learn and to know that they're not alone and that there is hope. So I'm bringing on now the hostesses of my co-hostesses of the Pink Room. Ladies, how are you doing today? How's
Much
it?
better than last week.
Wonderful.
And we know that we have several people that are on.
I have the oil of joy with me today.
You have the oil of joy. We have several of our ladies, or if you're watching, invite them to also have watch parties on their pages and invite others. So we're going to jump right in, and we want to start talking about our reactions to President-elect Joseph Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. We have several things we want to share with you. Remember, the topic of this, or the title of this Pink Room, this special edition, is Lessons We Learned from the U.S. election. And this is when we say we mean women. Lessons that we have learned from this electoral process. So let's first get reactions, then we go into the lessons. Who would like to be first?
I refused to read until it was called. And that told me so much about where I am, in that I would not acknowledge the good news until it was confirmed by somebody else, because it felt like it could be snatched away at any minute.
Yeah.
And to go from 13% states being called at 13% Tuesday night to states not being called at 95% Friday afternoon, and how that just was just like, I could not breathe until I knew that someone had actually called it and said, yes, they won.
Yes. I feel, I mean, I think that that feeling was just so identical across the board, for all of us hoping for the best for this country, for ourselves, and for the future generations that, that will follow. I mean, my daughter came in and said, Mom, Biden won. And when she said that, I was just like, at first it was just like, no, it's not true. It's not true. No, I don't want to get excited, And then when she left, and, I just, it started to sink in. When I was by myself, to think that a woman today has won the vice presidency of the United States after, all of these years of this country being in existence, and I burst into tears. I mean, I just had to cry. It was such an emotional moment for me. It was just like, I have dreamed of this moment, since the moment I remember Geraldine Ferraro. Yeah, I remember her running on the Democratic ticket, and I'm like, I had these high hopes. And I was very young back then, but I had this hope that women would be able to reach this level of leadership in this country. I mean, this is supposedly one of the most, advanced countries in the world. And we're so lagging behind on making women part of this path that this country's on. So I was just that I had a very emotional morning Saturday.
Right.
Wow. Well, I was just totally happy to look at what the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness in America and in the world represented. People who were given rights just by being born on this earth stood up, showed out, and we made it happen. And it showed that the democracy still works, and that women are a force to be reckoned with. As you see how wonderfully we are represented on this ticket. And now we're a vice president-elect, Kamala Harris, is just giving us all the ability and the nod to smile and know that we just have to keep on pushing.
Oh man, yeah.
I think
yes.
I think there are several things, and for me, I'm still not out of the woods, and we'll discuss that afterwards. With the lack of legal protections that there is for
voting.
Exactly, for voting, and for someone who is elected legally, and there is a person who is refusing to concede, and what that could look like, right? But I must say that there is a lot of jubilation. I am so ecstatic about the coalitions that have been built and been formed around this ticket. You're talking about Kamala Harris, the Divine Nine, Black Greek Life. I'm not part of any sorority or anything, but I know well about it. I know a lot of friends who are part of it. A lot of my colleagues are part of, and I know how tight-knit those networks are. And to have someone from a historically Black college be in that level, I mean, that says a lot about this country. We've come a very far way, but to see how she was supported by all these sororities and fraternities, those coalitions really inspired me. There is a video that we'll show at the end. We didn't show it at the top, but the Florida State FAMU University, and how all of them marched their students out to vote. They had an election day parade. It was fantastic.
Yes, that was awesome.
the stroll to the polls of all the fraternities and sororities, the Black Greek life, the coalitions of Black and brown people around this country. They did what we've always said, that we're more powerful than we think we are. And when we come together, there's no stopping us. So I am inspired by that, while I'm still with trepidation, but I'm clearly inspired. I am happy that it happened. I am sorry that it took so long, but I am happy that it happened. And now that it has happened, I am just saying, why on earth did this happen before? But God has a different timing from us. And I know that he is probably saying, listen, it is time. It is time. I just want to say one thing. I have not been able to understand why the rest of the country has not taken a cue from New York.
In what respect, Norca?
In this respect, the current president of the country is a New Yorker. He was born here in Queens. I've spoken at the congregation that his family went to, Methodist congregation. I've spoken at that congregation. The congregation is right there, smack dab in Queens. Yes. His family left an endowment for the congregation, which was very generous and kind of them. But when this gentleman, I'm trying to be as kind as I can. When this gentleman,
you'll confuse people. They won't know who
this person.
Okay, so when the current president won the election, no one in New York was celebrating, and I don't know why the country did not put an eye into that. This is a New Yorker. This is a person born, grown, works, live, known by every New Yorker. Yeah. New York was not celebrating. The country did not take a cue from that. In fact, the next day, people were out protesting in front of the towers. That's one. Two, the vote in New York was only 20+% for this particular president. Don't you think if this person was someone that people loved and that people trusted, that there will be more New Yorkers voting for him?
You're trying to be logical.
Why the rest of the country has not taken a cue? But I'm just laying this here. I don't want us to discuss or debate it. But
because the rest of the country
is not dealing in reality. The country,
exactly. They were just voting for somebody that they saw on reality TV.
There you go.
Because they had no idea. They had no idea who he was.
But
I don't think so, though, Teresa. I don't think so. The person who we saw on reality TV is the person who he was: flippant, arrogant, mean, abusive.
Yes, right.
It's the exact same. It's
you know what?
Person.
You're right.
But this is the thing. New York knew that. Everybody else thought that, this is part of the, the show. It's part of the show.
What they love about him is that.
Exactly.
And we'll get down more deeply into this as the show goes on. But what they love about him is that he's mean, that he's arrogant, that he will say whatever comes to his mind, that he'll win at any cost, or at least try to win at any cost. When you ask these people who vote for him why they vote for him, nobody says they voted for him because he's a nice guy, he has high Christian values, or he has integrity. They voted for him because they know he will win and do anything.
Well, many Christians thought that, still think that he is a Christian, and that he, and that's the issue that I always had with him, because, I heard him out at the beginning when he was running. I said, I'm going to be open-minded and I'm going to hear everything, right? And just to make my own conclusions. And when he said, he was asked, like, God, Jesus is your savior, and have you asked him for forgiveness? And he says, I don't have to ask for forgiveness because I don't sin.
Absolutely.
At that moment, I said, this man, like, that's all I need to hear from him. He's running with this banner of Christianity only for convenience, because he has no idea. I wrote on this one group that I don't know why I was in there, but there was like mainly people of white descent were in there, and somebody put up a picture of him when he held up the Bible, and I wrote in there, I said, he has no idea what's in that book. And they were like tearing their their robes and putting ash on their head. They were like, how could you say that about him? And I could tell you right now, I will take a test with him on biblical knowledge, and I will beat him. I will leave him in the dust. And I'm not a biblical scholar, but there is no way. And he has no idea what the Bible says. He has no idea what the Bible says.
Go ahead, Shonda.
Look, back to Norca's point. So the world did not see New York. In my opinion, New York is like this big melting pot, right, of the world.
Here we go.
And to ignore something so crucial, to see that his native-born state did not give him the amount of attention that he thought, or the world thinks that he should receive, is a sign, people,
Exactly.
that this man was not worthy of even our attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wake up and maybe ask questions to the right people. Why? Not the Wall Street people, but ask the people all throughout the urban communities why this man did not get attention, let alone the affiliation that he had with the former mayor of New York.
Go ahead, Shonda. Go ahead.
No, that says a lot right there.
Yeah. And let me
agree.
add to the fact that he cannot return to New York without being in hiding. Let's remember that.
Correct.
He cannot return to New York without being in hiding, so he has changed his residence to Florida. Those things to me are clear indications. I don't know what people were thinking, but anyway.
I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Too much attention to him. Too much attention.
I think Kamala said something, and I want us to end with this in the segment. I think she said something that to me spoke well when she said to the American people, you chose hope, you chose decency, and you chose truth. And I think that is what we need to focus on, that moving forward, there were those who realized that, you know what, this is not going to work. But anyway, let's see, what were the reactions from the world about the U.S. elections? What were people saying?
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, let me say that when I watch the people dancing in the streets, it felt like a people who have been oppressed getting that knee off their chest. And then I was like, and it feels that way because that's exactly what it is. So if we were to look at when the Berlin Wall fell, when Saddam Hussein's statue was taken down, different instances in where you have seen people celebrating out on the street after an election, dancing, happy, honking their horns, putting up signs. That is something that I haven't ever really associated with US elections. I remember when President Obama won, there was this same sense, but not among all Americans. It was more a certain demographic. More Black people were happy, even though he was able to capture the hopes and dreams across the board. But the celebration, the jubilation, all of this exuberance wasn't as, maybe I'm not remembering it as much. But what I believe that the people around the world connected to that feeling. The reactions were not only of relief. When looking at what different world leaders said in congratulating him, in congratulating them,
Right.
It was, let's get back to business.
Right.
Welcome back, America. Right. We're so glad that we're going to have some decency back. Let's get back to our climate issues and our freedom issues. We have work to do. Let's get to it. Congratulations. We're so happy to see you again. So after being stunned on a daily basis by what was happening,
the circus.
Yes, getting a known entity back in that office. Because let's remember, Joe Biden is not a stranger to those houses, palaces, He's not a stranger. They've known him for a while. He's been on the scene not only of the US, but of the world. So they were saying hi to someone they knew. That's one.
Exactly.
The other half of the reaction, which is just as great, is all of those nations that see they have skin in the game now. We have Asia having skin in the game. We have Jamaicans
Yes.
and therefore all Caribbeans having skin in the game. We have countries who have for a long time had women leaders, seeing that finally there's skin in the game.
Right.
So there is this joy about what's going to be on the menu the first week and the kind of celebration that's going to happen. But not only the joy, but like a sense of relief that things that this country has championed for so long are again important. One, but also all those who were scratching their heads wondering what were Americans thinking
Yeah.
now know what Americans think.
Right.
Because I must be honest, I wondered. I wondered.
Of course.
I wondered 4 years ago, and I wondered on Tuesday again. Tuesday night, I was like, I can't. Because 4 years ago, they didn't know. Now they know, and he still has all of these people voting. I wondered. And I think that the fact that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won not only speaks to their ticket, but also speaks well of the American people around the world, where they can see, okay, they're not all crazy. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
Yeah. No, totally agree.
You know what is interesting is that I think a lot of times Americans do not realize the type of impact they have on the rest of the world, right? So his policies were always America first, the current president. And a lot of Americans jumped on that like, oh yeah, let's take care of home first, not realizing that you are ready. You already have impact out there. So whatever you decide here, as someone used to say, if America sneezes, the world catches pneumonia. So you are linked with the world. There's no such thing as we're by ourselves. But let me give you my personal experience. And I do remember, Tricia, when Obama, because that was a year before I think a year or two before my dad passed. And I remember going for the first time, becoming a citizen and going to vote. And with my husband and him and I saying we're voting for our dads, we're voting for our moms, we're voting, for all our ancestors, everybody. And I remember when he won and our phone was just ringing off the hook with people from all over calling us, celebrating. And in New York, I remember in Times Square, there was a huge celebration of black and whites were celebrating the victory. It felt like joy then, but this time around, it felt a lot to me like relief. And here's what I said.
Yes. Yes.
I was in Panama when the United States invaded Panama, and Noriega hid for almost a month, I think it was, in the Catholic place there. And then when he came out, finally, the country was not able to breathe, even though the Americans were there. People, there was this, they're trying to assure you everything is going to be okay. Wow. People were not okay until they're like, until you catch that man, we're not okay. And knowing that it was somewhere in the country, we didn't care how many troops were around and how much they said they were protected. Until you caught him, we were not okay. We could not breathe. When he finally gave up himself, because that's what he gave up himself, they actually bullied him out of there with rock music. The country people were in the streets, every single point of the country. That is how this felt to me.
It's how it looked.
Liberated. And I've experienced that. It was a people dancing and feeling liberation. People got to sit with that. This is not just about a Democratic ticket that won. People were feeling relief and liberation. That was what that celebration was in the street.
Exactly. You know what? Also, I think looking at my opinion and how the world reacted it was a big sign of relief, like you said, that others in the world could see that dictators could lose
Yes.
and that bullies
Wow.
do lose. And I think for those who are suffering under particular regimes have hope that
Wow.
they can get rid of their, their leaders who are oppressing, suppressing, abusing, etc. So I
Mhm.
think this really represents, in my personal opinion, reaction throughout the world. Like if America can do what America is capable of doing, so can we.
Mhm.
And I think more so, Sean, that America has always placed itself as the beacon of decency, morality.
Yes,
Hmm.
of
So
what's good, right?
exactly, we've always looked down on those countries. Like,
Right.
and I used to, and I laughed and I told a colleague, I'm like, yeah, you all used to be looking down on us, like, look at people in the poor, those third world
Mhm.
countries. Look at how they act. I said, this is how it feels.
Yep.
This is how it feels to be oppressed and having to go out in the streets, do what you have to do. This is how it feels. So people needed to sit with that for a moment and say, hey, I know what it is to be on the other side. And it did not feel well at all. It did
But
not feel well at all.
But
that's what
something
the
else.
African American has always felt in America.
Yeah,
That's
thank you.
Yeah.
exactly what
Shonda.
the African
Thank
American
you.
has always felt in America. So we're here. We're here with our brothers and sisters throughout the world. We do understand. And that's why I say, in my opinion, the relief is bullies can lose, dictators can get kicked right out. And so we
Yes.
prove it. And you'll note in how much the vote of people of color is so powerful in America.
Yes. Norca, on that point that you were talking about, this is how it feels to be repressed. One thing that I noticed when I went out on Tuesday, every year I had no problem with putting every election year, putting on my sticker and showing everybody that I had voted. Like I'd be out on, like I go to school and, I actually had the privilege of walking in the past two elections, walking to the polling place from the school, and school actually allowed my students to come with me so they can see what the voting process was like. And this year I went out to, after I had voted, I felt that I couldn't put on that I vote sticker because it was calling attention to myself. And I live in I live in a rural area. So that there's a lot of Trump supporters around here. Even in this Latino community in this little part of the corner of California where I live. And you know what I noticed? I didn't see people out and about with the stickers that I had voted. Like I was like, wow. I know a lot of people did mail in, and they weren't, but it was just so like I think that nobody wanted to be identified. Like nobody wanted, it's like there's this thing about like we didn't want to talk about it. I think it was just there's so much tension in the air with how we feel about polarized this whole situation is. But I noticed that on Tuesday, and it was very sad. It was a very sad feeling, but it's been a lot better since then.
Wow. For me, for us in New York, I think our thing was making sure. Did you go vote? you better make sure you vote. Those lines were extremely long. It was rainy. It was windy. But it's more like, okay, I voted. Here's proof. I voted. So that's interesting that you would share that because it helps us to understand how people really feel in their different regions and settings. It might be a totally different experience.
Yeah.
Well, I
had a friend.
Florida. I live in Florida.
Uh-oh.
And
girl.
I've had to suffer through the hate of people saying, "What were you thinking?" Right?
Wow.
Especially Miami-Dade.
Yeah.
And I've had discussions with people, and you know what? Another thing I felt was the freedom to respond, because I've been careful with what people say on my social media, and if I don't like it, I just snooze you or block you, and if I'm in somebody else's page, I don't respond at all. And today I responded to something, and it was a comment that basically said, "Oh, well, we went from hateful speech to blah, blah, blah. Nothing's going to change." And I was like, no, this wasn't just hateful speech. And I went out and, kind of described the more than 500 children
Yep.
and the George Floyd and the pandemic, 200,000. And I said, this is not just about hateful speech.
No.
And
Exactly.
then the person did a care emoji and then proceeded to say, well, but it's too bad that things won't, nothing's going to be improved. And I said, no, I voted so things would improve.
That's right.
Because
Yeah.
just the fact that someone in the White House isn't empowering these races, just the fact that we have someone who deal with the pandemic and not out of arrogance, it's not the same. The
That's
two
Exactly.
things are not
No,
the
no.
same.
You should have just
Had I
you should have
believed
just clapped back.
No, had I believed that things were the same, I would not have gone into public health as my profession,
That's right.
because we can both improve people's conditions and lead them to
Yes.
look towards heaven.
Absolutely.
Tricia, you should have just said this. There's a woman in the White House now.
Oh, I didn't even go there.
Things are
I
things are
didn't-
not going to
yeah.
be the same.
No, I didn't even. I didn't even. But the fact that I could even do it today when I would not have done it last Monday.
Yeah, yeah,
Was
exactly.
because I thought,
Right.
you guys lost and you're still on this bandwagon?
Right. Yeah. 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 Takes us to our next point here.
Yep.
All right. So the black vote.
Ooh, say it again. The black vote, especially here in America.
Say it loud.
Black and proud. Well, look.
That's right.
Over 150 years ago, right? The 15th Amendment came in. If we just give you a little history, because sometimes we forget our history.
Come on, Chanda.
Right?
Yeah.
That's when Americans were given the right to vote, Black Americans. But 2 years prior to that, can you imagine? African Americans were given a right to citizenship. Seriously? Citizenship. Wow. So what happened to the people who were here telling Black Americans that they had to have a right to citizenship? Where was your citizenship?
Right.
Where was your documents?
Mm-hmm.
Were you an illegal alien, as some people like to use, even though there's no such thing? Mm-hmm. But hello, 1868. So a lot of this is just yesterday, really. I mean, it seems like a long time, but time moves real fast. 100 years ago, we, all four of us in this pink room who are in America, were given the right to vote. What does that tell you? And then 50 years later, 50 years ago, we'll talk about another woman as we go on further in this segment, who was the first African-American woman and the first African-American woman to run for presidency at that time. But voter suppression has always been a part of America's game.
Absolutely.
Keep the black vote suppressed. Why? Because the power of the people. Here you enslave us, you use us for the capitalism of America. You know our numbers were powerful because you, as was used, you allowed us to, you were breeding us, right? Mm-hmm. For more slavery. So you knew the power. First of all, you enslaved, because we didn't come here as slaves. You enslaved people who were extremely intelligent, who knew politics and politics way before you. You actually had to learn it. So I'm sorry to go on my little historical rant, but this is what America is all about. And so not just in 1964, but to bring some of us up, and if we have some younger viewers who may be able to relate to this particular person, around the 60s when Dr. King started the civil rights movement, that's when America's political position began to shift. Mm-hmm. That's when you began to see the change. And so in 1965, which was just when, ladies, that was just yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. The Voting Rights Act created change in America, especially in America's South. Now, check this out. Where were most of those states that the battleground took place? America's South, right? Mm-hmm. So that shows you how powerful the black vote is still in America, and not only just in America, but in the South, right? Mm-hmm. Always has been, right? And people don't like to talk about it. They think the black vote is just a monolith, that you just clump everything all together. We can no longer do that, right? And then to look at how even powerful in 2016, the current occupant of the White House targeted over 3.5 million black people to discourage them.
From voting.
Okay, let me use the right word. Suppress them
Press them.
from
Yes.
voting.
Yes.
So the black vote in America, we are the most loyal bloc of the Democratic Party in America. The
That's
most loyal. Now you want to break that down even some more? Who holds up that Democratic Party? Black women
Black
in America.
That's it.
Ask Doug Jones how he was put into office in Alabama, which was one of the battleground states that gave Obama. Look at where the vote is so powerful. Stacey Abrams is fighting like I don't know what because the black vote there is so powerful. So let us not talk about just the black vote. We're talking about the black vote in America has always been extremely powerful. And that's why it's continuing to be suppressed. So you can't look at us anymore as a monolith. You need to start coming out, speaking to us from all levels. We keep talking about vote the ticket down. The ticket from the top down needs to come around and connect and relate to people in the community because we can't forget you. If we're not, discouraged like in 2016, we can just say, give you the finger, give you the bird and say, forget you. And then you'll be coming back to our little black churches talking about, please vote for me. I'm bringing around some government cheese. But no, it's not about that. It shows you just how powerful, and I'm making light of it because sometimes that just helps people to understand.
No, don't make light of it because Trump was sending boxes of food to people so they would the black community.
It's just ridiculous.
These are the things that I think oftentimes people are so segmented that they don't understand. This history lesson that Shonda has given us here, right?
It's her story.
Right, her story. It's critical to understand the dynamics of how things operate in this country, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot to this whole voter suppression. And when we talk about voter suppression, think about it. If there had not been voter suppression in this country, the changes would have happened a long time ago. It is because now people feel like, listen, enough of it. This election has proven to people, no. I'm no longer going to be afraid to vote.
Right.
I'm no longer going to listen to you when you tell me I should not vote. I'm no longer going to feel that I don't have a voice. It took a while to get there, but this is exactly the result of an empowered people.
Exactly. We've always been empowered. I'm sorry, Tricia.
No, go ahead.
Even a 30 and under said this is not the Democratic, party of old. We're not lying down gracefully. We have this righteous anger. We're unemployed, this pandemic, the killings. No. Y'all need to revisit just how powerful we are and respect us. And especially black women, because they want to put us again into these categories. And they know that a lot of times we have accepted the bare minimum from the Democratic Party, but it is always the Democratic Party who leans on the black vote and especially the black woman to make things in America happen. And it's reflective throughout the world. And if it were not for the black vote and black women in America, a lot of people wouldn't have the opportunities to be in America.
And it's not now, it's centuries. Right.
It's been happening forever and forever. We've never gone.
Black women have been saving the world, as I say, from itself.
Yes, that's right. Well, look at the recognition and acknowledgement that both, and I'm just gonna be real cool about it. Kamala said, "It's those black women's shoulders on whom I stand."
That's absolutely
right.
Joe himself, it is the black vote who he finally has acknowledged, and probably Barack Obama was not able to do it because he had the code switch like we do, but it was that black vote that pushed him over, and so now the agenda needs to be brought forward,
right?
Especially through that group, Black Lives Matter, and the 3 black women who founded that organization.
Right.
And I guess that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to say. That I believe that we are not suspicious enough.
Thank you.
In the way we see things. I'm going to mention 2 things, and I'm mentioning here because we can. Number 1, the mismanagement of the pandemic may not have been an accident.
Oh, it was not. It was not.
No, but I'm going to say.
Who are the people dying? We dying.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
but even from that, I'm not talking even about the death.
No, I mean, no, I don't mean the deaths. I mean the mismanagement, because we are the ones who were dying. Our communities were not serviced. There was nothing put in place for our community because people just, they didn't care.
But that's not where I'm going with it.
Okay, go where you're going. But this is what I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do not disagree with you.
Right.
Where I'm going with this though is, who can vote?
Exactly. Well, listen.
Who can vote? So
especially since they changed parts of the Voting Rights Act.
When people believe that this is someone just bumbling along, not knowing what he's doing, and things just happen by accident, and no. And I believe that we are too quick to let people off by saying they're not smart enough or they don't know enough. I believe that we should come off that lack of suspicacia.
Yeah.
And understand that things are the way they are because they've been designed that way.
But we do know that there is a mastermind behind all of this, and his name is Stephen Miller. You know, because it's not, you know, I don't think that there's brilliance in the White House right now.
And that's why I'm saying
this is a strategic evil mind by the name of Stephen Miller.
But that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We are too quick to let people off the hook.
That's right.
Yes, with that excuse.
Being brilliant includes knowing who to listen to.
That's
number
right.
one, and number two, who
creating.
you can use to push your agenda forward.
That's
Yes.
right.
And the people who can vote are the healthy people.
That's right.
And if you look at what's happened during the entire course of this pandemic,
There we go.
Black people have stayed at home. When they reopened all the bars, I was trying to find, when I was looking at the videos on TV, I was like, where are the brethren? I wasn't seeing any brethren in the bars when they were just open. Do you know why? They better not be at the bars, because somebody was going to pull their ear right back home. So we mustn't believe that things happen by chance. That was my number one. The second example I'm going to use, Black Lives Matter. The reason why there has been so much demonization of the movement is because it wasn't just about the protest.
There we go.
It was about the vote.
It was
Yes.
When you have an organization
That's
that
what
is
it was.
grassroots,
Yes, and they were on
that has
time.
connected with women who have lost their children,
Yes.
they won and said, this is not okay.
That's
And
right.
that same organization is using that presence, that power, that pain. That's going to move people to vote more than prosperity.
Absolutely.
So if you malign that organization, then people who aren't paying attention are going to say, oh yeah, and they're racist, they're violent, they're blah, blah, blah. So when did racist become a bad word? And we're still fighting the N-word in 2020. We're still fighting as Black people against the N-word. And in just this year, between March and November, racist is a bad word.
Listen, this is, and I like how Tricia has laid it out, but this is, if you look at the white supremacist playbook, this is right out of the playbook. And it's not one person. It's an entire way of you. Even the fact that the concession has not come, ladies and gentlemen who are with us.
Yes,
listen.
Yes.
Yes.
The fact that this person was pushed into the Supreme Court. All of these things are part of a larger picture, creating something that's going to come down the line. The fact that Black and brown people were dying and like flies, and it was like, okay, it's gonna whatever, who cares? So the fact that Black Lives Matter was alive, that divide and conquer where some Black people started to feel, oh, Black Lives Matter. Oh, but I am not part of them because they don't believe in this. All of this narrative has been created right out of the playbook of white supremacists. Divide and conquer, keep the people suppressed, keep them fighting among each other, and we keep doing what we want, rising above, getting all the power and all the money.
And again, erase Black women, because it was 3 Black women who started this movement. Erase them; they're non-existent only unless we had
because
to
who
use
do
them on purpose.
who do you hear? Who do you hear speaking out against these this movement?
Exactly.
Males within religious organizations who are used to their positions of patriarchy.
There we go.
They're the ones that are speaking out,
and
they're the ones that are against.
And patriotism.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All come together.
So what's the lesson we learned from for the Black vote? I think, listen, there's a galvanization to me, a renewed galvanization, and I think everything just connected, and timing is everything. I feel that people and women are leading now, and there's no erasure because now people are calling these names all over. Which was so to me the lesson is there is power when we come together. We've been saying this for a long time.
That's right.
If there's anywhere where you can see that, it's today in that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. It's in the election. But let's go to our next segment, which we want to talk about.
Teresa.
The South
Asian vote. Wow. I mean, what a moment to just not to be, in the U.S. as people of South Asian descent, or being a South Asian immigrant. I recently heard about something called the brown wave. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but the brown wave is how the South Asian community is identified. Their successes. You have so many people, like Hassan Minhaj, who's such a brilliant comedian who really knows what his platform is about, and that is about bringing social justice. But not only him, just so many people who are incredibly talented, and not only who have actually stepped out of the mold of this idea that people who come from these, South Asian countries are here to service us as, IT engineers only, and as doctors, and this, and so forth. And one of the interesting things that many of us might not know, but the highest number of the visas that are given out for employment here in the U.S. are for people from South Asia, South Asian people who are from India and Pakistan and Sri Lanka, and just all of these countries that have highly trained professionals who decide to come to the U.S. and make their home here, as part of this this community that has such a thriving technological market, because the U.S. is, at the forefront of technology, and they have been part of that foundation to build our economy when it comes to all of the technological advances. We have so many people that are now part of our community with this, South Asian ancestry, and they have. I think that it has been just not only a relief for them in the sense of because they, as long as you're a person of color, you are exposed to racism. However, I think that an added level of racism is, if you can have that, but just another layer, and I think of exposure for many of these brothers and sisters who come from a lot of these countries, who are unfortunately also labeled as, they're looked at as terrorists. And that is one of the biggest issues that our, South Asian communities have to deal with. The moment that there's any rhetoric talking about, Muslim bans, and then they especially when you have this kind of hatred coming from the federal government, limiting people into this country because of the country you come from.
Right.
It really affects the way these citizens are seen. But to see somebody who is part of their community reach this level of leadership is by far, I think, something I think that nobody can even fathom what that means to these communities, even those not living here. I mean, my husband was telling me that he read that in the town from where Kamala's mother is from. They were praying. They were praying, for the U.S. elections, but for her, especially. And so, can you imagine the level of impact that these blood ties have? Knowing that somebody who you can identify with is now part of the conversation about this, the economic conversation, the racial equality conversation, the gender equality conversation in the U.S. I think that this is a really good time for all of our communities, but definitely, especially for our South Asian brothers and sisters, because they have for many generations served. They have also, been part of that backbone that this country's been built on. The wealth of this country, especially in the, speaking of, the technological world, has seen these individuals give their talents, and now being recognized as part of the conversation of the community. I think is by far one of the most exciting things that many of the generations have experienced. So their vote is definitely one that has made a big difference. And they're not a small community. We, for some reason, don't speak of them as much. We tend to think that they're not as active politically, but we saw them come out, and we saw them support the individual, as well as the philosophy of decency and honesty and and equality. So we're very happy that these individuals have found some
representation.
The word I'm looking for, representation, and I think exactly, and validation. Because they have been here for so many years.
So what's interesting? Kamala, Vice President-elect, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Her grandfather was actually a politician in that area. So she comes from a line of people who public service has been in the blood. What I find very interesting about the South Asian vote, because I have a lot of students who are South Asian, and they would say to me that their parents always tell them, you come to this country, put your head down, do the work, get the grades, get a good education, move on, don't get involved, right? Because you don't take sides. What I find with them is that Kamala's ascension galvanized them. Immediately, whether the media said it or not, whether they immediately said, she's one of us. Now, I must say this to my Black folk. People were still questioning whether Kamala was Black.
Oh, mercy.
I have a problem with that, right? But the South Asian, they were like, oh, what? Oh, she's one of us. She's one of us. Immediately they started. Their vote was strong for her. Like over 87%, they were like, we're voting for her. Because immediately they saw she represents us. We don't care if what other side of blood she has part of us. And I think that is the thing about people understanding that, listen, we're connected. There's no such thing as only one thing. If you look way back in the roots, you're going to find something. So correct. See that and not question it and immediately attach it. Much respects to them for that.
Oh, and what else I was thinking about with the South Asian vote and learning more about Kamala's history, Vice President-elect Harris's history. is the fact that her mother wanted to come to study, and her mother's father said, yes, go,
Yep.
go,
Mm-hmm.
and go study whatever it is you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the the fact that the importance of fathers believing in their daughters.
Yep.
Yes.
And we of course are champions of women empowerment.
That's
But
right.
it is so important for fathers to empower their daughters.
It is critical.
Yeah.
It doesn't come unless it is sown into you.
That's right.
My father told me, you can be anything you want to be.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
and you need to think the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started thinking differently than how he thought I would think, I remember the day he looked at me and he's like, but, and I said, you told me.
I agree.
Yeah.
You can't back out
Yes.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I believe that the grandpa empowered her mother, who in turn
Yes.
empowered her. And I think that's
Yes.
very important. And the other thing is that in countries where we come from, the linking of the South Asian community with the Black community is not something strange.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
No,
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
In the
it's
Caribbean,
not strange.
Yeah.
it's not strange
It's a marriage that's been happening
for a long
for
time.
a long time.
Very true.
Well, you know what I find just like I think like serendipity, the fact that they met at a demonstration,
Yes.
Yes.
and that it's just Kamala was just meant for this life. The moment her parents came together at in a in this kind, they didn't meet at a bar, they didn't meet blind date. No, they met in this common goal, to have their voices heard. And I think one of the most beautiful things that I would have loved to see is Kamala's mother, see her take this position. But I think that I speak for all of those of us who are overjoyed by seeing this woman take this position. I think that we will all of us feel the joy for her mother, and together I think we just irradiate the fact that she's loved, she's admired, and for me, to see her, I told my granddaughter, I said, sweetheart, today is such an important day, because today
Right.
we know that you can be whatever you want to be. You can be president if you want. Today we've finally are able to say that, and I think that was something that has been held back for so long for every woman that has been wanting to see a better United States.
Right. So I'm going to read four comments. Go ahead, Sean.
I'm sorry. I think Teresa made a good point at how her parents met, both of whom were immigrants to America. And they came here because they saw something in America that showed that they, as people of color, had the opportunity to excel in life, right?
Right.
And so their parents were in agreement with this. And again, it was in her DNA. They met at a protest, and those particular communities did come together. And so we know that Conquer and Divide takes place in the Black community. She's not Black enough. She's not this enough. Nevertheless, she is a representation of all of us on this Pink Room chat.
Yes.
And so she's there, and just happy to see that they, as a community, the South Asian community, said, yes, this is our representation here, and we're going for it.
That's right.
Yes.
Let me read some comments here. Denise says there is a much larger playbook. We must refuse to be separated. Absolutely. And that segue great to Shonda's point. We need to stop looking at our differences and look at our commonalities. Once we start doing that, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with, as we proved in this election. Chantal says we need to see undercurrents of all these injustices taking place in this country. I am inspired by all of this energy. I am seen amongst my peers and older family members and friends. What a moment. Absolutely, Chantal.
Yes. Yes.
It is definitely inspiring.
Yeah.
Esther Cross said here, this playbook is not new. Look back in history, see how many have followed the same strategy. Absolutely. Hitler, Mussolini, Mein Kampf. Yep, it is possible. He was on his way to dictatorship if we're not careful. We believe so. Those around Hitler
absolutely
as well. We must know and understand history. Absolutely, Esther, we are with you. It's a playbook that has been played before, and we need to be in full attention.
May I say something here, Norca, before you move
from this point? So go ahead, Tricia, and then I'll read the other comment that I want to share.
There is value in studying everybody and not just your own country.
That's right.
Of course.
I think that one of the disadvantages of American education,
yes, ma'am,
of United States education,
yes,
is that it is very inward looking and very country centered.
Yes.
And not just the education, but the news. If something is happening that is not directly connected or impacting the United States, you won't know. So when things are happening around, what's leading up to those things, you never hear about them. So you can't see in what's happening to you how similar it is to what happened to them, because you never got to see what happened to them. All you got was the rhetoric when it happened, and then you can call people socialists. You didn't see all the steps it took to get to that place. And then that's why people can say, well, if he doesn't win, I'm going to move to Costa Rica. Why? Because they don't have socialist medicine. Excuse me?
So, no idea.
They have a system that we need to have here.
There is value. There is actual value in studying other places, in having a broader view. And not only traveling for vacation, but traveling for culture and traveling for knowledge. Because if you're always just looking inward and you're the best and you're the only and you're the perfect, then you don't get to learn the lessons that we should learn, not only from history, but from current events.
Right.
Exactly.
But Tricia, I want to extend that, and I totally agree with you, and I've been a proponent, and that's part of decolonizing the curriculum.
Yes.
That's part of decolonizing the curriculum.
Correct.
And I've always been a proponent of that, and I have a greater problem with the way we teach history in the United States.
That's why it's called history.
It is still very much a white supremacy. If I have students in college coming to me and I have them read a book and they're saying to me, I never heard about this before. This happened in the United States? How did this happen in the United States and I didn't know about it? There is a problem in the educational system. I mean, and I'm talking about basic things about civil rights. Right?
That's why it's
I'm talking about things like laws with redlining. They're like, this happened that people couldn't live here. So there is a problem, and it has to do with white supremacy. The way we teach, we keep people with blinders, as Teresa said. You only look at certain parts of your history, and you do not look at the rest of the world. And we bring that into
Norca.
And I'm glad you're bringing that part. You watch the typical American news, and if you're lucky, you get one international view. There is nothing else. It's as if we only exist in this world.
Listen, this hurricane that's sweeping through, that came up here and went right back around.
Exactly.
And has demolished and devastated entire, I don't even know how to explain it. Have you seen one picture of it?
Not one. I've seen the pictures on Facebook from friends who live in the area.
Not one picture of it in the news?
Not one. Not a mention of that hurricane.
Yeah.
That is why it's called history. Sorry, Teresa. It is his
No.
story.
I just want to say this.
Our story or her story.
And maybe that's the reason why, as Black and brown people, we're so divided in this country, because we can only see what's in front
We've been indoctrinated. We've been indoctrinated to worship the white man and the white God. Listen, I grew up in a Black neighborhood with Black teachers, but with white textbooks. And I never heard of Juneteenth until I was an adult.
Wow.
How is that possible?
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Yeah.
So there's something
Teaching
wrong
to
with
the
that.
curriculum.
They're not gonna
Decolonizing
ask
the
Right?
you.
curriculum.
They're not gonna ask you about they're not gonna ask you about Juneteenth in the SAT, in
Perfect.
Right.
the ACT,
Exactly.
in the
Exactly.
GRE, or any of the others. You're not gonna get asked that.
God,
It's not part of the standard. That it's not.
That's a
Yeah.
Teaching to the
I just want,
curriculum.
I want to say this because it's been on my, I don't know if I've said this before, but one of the things that my amazing and beautiful, and I hope that Mrs. Rachel Neal sees this one day. I hope that she's on Facebook, but not a whole lot. She was my sixth grade teacher, and
You
she still
talked
is
about
because
her.
she still lives in my heart. I talk about her because I love that woman is just like, she taught me so many beautiful things. But one of the things that I remember her always saying was, "Black is beautiful," and that was like our anthem, And I mean, I feel as part of the community because I feel I'm part of the community. I'm not separated because I happen to have a lighter skin tone. I think that our plight is, unfortunately, all of us are in this together. I wish, we could say somebody's ahead, no, all of us are in this together and we have to pull through together.
Right.
And I just remember that her saying that constantly, reminding us that Black is beautiful. And, that's where I always have admired the Black community in a very, very respectful sense, because I know that the difficulties that have just filled the life of this, of our brothers and sisters, continues on even into the 21st century. And that's mind blowing.
Right.
That is mind blowing.
But look at how the well-rounded, caring, compassionate, understanding person that you are, Theresa.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't see yourself as other because of your experience with that teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the importance of having an educational system and people who run an educational system and teach within the system who are aware, who love themselves and love others and are able to transmit that. Like, that is one of the most powerful things. Every time I hear you share that, I think about, wow, this is what is lacking and is needed. But I'm going to go to this last comment. This was by Mr. Manuel. It's in Spanish, but he's saying that there are a lot of Latinos.
He said it in English earlier.
Okay. Who are frustrated with the election. I don't want to scroll all the way up. Because Biden-Harris won. And he says that unfortunately, they came to this country illegally and they gave their vote to the persons who lost the election, and now they're against crime. This takes us to the Latino vote.
Exactly.
I want to share a little bit about what I found about the Latino vote. I know Theresa is also going to share some stuff. I want to share with you what I found here from the Pew Research Center. It says the Latinos make up 20, because everyone is concerned about the vote in Florida, right? So Latinos make up 20% of the Florida's electorate. So their vote is crucial for that swing state. Cuban Americans typically vote Republican in that state, and they vote in similar levels for Mr. Trump in 2020 as they did in 2016. However, there was some improvement among other Hispanics, like Venezuelans in the area, who seem to also favor Mr. Trump, and he went up 12 points with them. Now, we have to also remember that, yes, while those Latinos helped Trump in Florida, you also have had those Latinos who helped Biden in Arizona, because they were the ones who brought in the vote in Arizona. So here's my analysis of this. Latinos are not a monolith, right? And I think that people keep trying to use the word Latino, and they think, oh, everybody. You got to remember that it's a whole lot of countries with a whole lot of backgrounds. People don't eat the same. Listen, they don't even speak Spanish the same.
Exactly.
One Spanish can be 10 different things in the different countries. So us thinking that the Latino vote is a block is not necessarily so. Now, I want to speak specifically to the Cubans and the Venezuelans. Cubans and Venezuelans who live in Florida, yes, we know that they come from communism and dictatorships, and you would say, how could they not see it? But we have to remember two things. this Republican young lady, Ana Navarro, was always been very genuine and spoke through to power.
Yes, she's legit. She's legit.
She shared how they would come and they literally brainwash the communities about, if you vote for the Democrats, it's going to be socialism. And people were afraid of, oh my goodness, we came from there. We don't want to go back. This is what I want to say to my Venezuelan and Cuban friends. You, not because you're in America now and you're under a dictatorship, which we was really kind of under already. Don't think because you saw all the things that there's provision here, which was lacking in your country. Don't think that because there's provision, you were not under a dictatorship with the current president. It's the same playbook, just that this is America, you had provision. The other people are not playing that game. But he was able to brainwash you into believing that they were going to come and take away from you. And because you have provision, you're not seeing that he is the one that is a problem. Now, let's look at Dominicans and Central Americans. Many Dominicans and Central Americans see themselves in this country as white because in their country, they saw themselves and identified themselves as white.
Yes.
This is an economy. They come and you're like, but you're brown. Where is it that you see yourself? And furthermore, South Americans, well, they have a little bit of European descent, see themselves as white. So there's always this kind of like, we don't understand. Why is it the Latinos don't get it? You have to go to the root because they themselves have been living under white supremacist playbooks for a long time. And they don't really understand their roots and they don't accept it. But to target them, we need to be able to speak to them, saying to them that, listen, the message is about poverty, is about equity, is about disenfranchisement. They understand that.
There's another point though, Norca.
Go ahead. They understand that. Go ahead.
The ones who came over first were not the poor and disenfranchised in their countries.
There we go. The Cubans.
The ones who were able to leave Cuba and the ones who were able to leave Venezuela were not the poor and disenfranchised.
Exactly.
They're still there.
Right.
They're still there.
And let's remember that the American government allows Cubans to come in here without bringing a piece of paper.
No, well.
Correct.
Yeah. Let's not forget when those Haitian boats came in with all the girls with their hair combed and with their best dress, and they put them back on the ship and they sent them back to Haiti. And the people were rejoicing in the street when they came, like, "Oh, we're in America, thank you!" And they rounded them up, arrested them, and sent them back to Haiti. They don't do that to Cubans. They don't do that to Cubans.
No, one and two. We don't want to be like a blanket statement is for everybody. But the same rhetoric that is used to say that Mexicans in third generation have not assimilated and why can't they speak English?
Mercy.
Have a stroll through Miami. Have a stroll through Miami. And talk to me after that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
So there's a reason. And I guess that is what this season has brought into my consciousness.
Yeah.
If you see things are a certain way, there's a reason.
Yep.
And, you know, one of the things that Victor was trying to point out was the fact that there are a lot of people, like we know some people personally who came into this country and overstayed their tourist visa. They're welcome. Married a U.S. citizen, became a U.S. citizen eventually, right?
Yeah.
And they voted for Trump.
Yep.
You know, and they think, look, like some of these people, they could pass for, a very light Black person. And they think that Trump likes them. He thinks, these individuals think that Trump is really for them. And, they put up these, like all these posts about, they lost the Hispanic vote here and, wherever they're from. Right. And I'm like, you have no idea, all of these people who voted for Trump, who are Hispanic, Latino, whatever, he wouldn't give you the time of day. He wouldn't allow you anywhere near where he lives, anywhere near his buildings or his golf courses. You would be thrown.
We would to clean and to cut the grass.
I'm sorry. Yes,
And
to
sir,
clean his bathrooms, right?
and
To
drink.
clean his golden toilets, because that's what you're good for. And it's mind-boggling
Right.
how you could offer your loyalty to somebody who doesn't give about you. They don't. They just want you to clean up their CRAP. They don't care about you. And how do you get this? And men, and a lot of these Latino men, and we'll talk about it in the next section, but it's beyond me to I just can't fathom how a lot of Latinos put after they talk so much trash about our communities, they call our men, because they call our men rapists. And they in a blanket statement, every single race on this planet has individuals who unfortunately make other people's lives miserable. That's one thing that I learned from my mom, who had an elementary school education. She taught me this one thing. She says, you know what? Everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, you Chinese, black, white, Mexican, there's always going to be good people and bad people.
That's right.
That's it. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I could have, picked up from my mother, because I am able to live as a better human being because of that. And it's unfortunate that we don't understand that this person who is denigrating our culture, our people in a way. Look, and let me speak to Mexicans, okay? Look, we have such a hard time, just finding some dignity in this country.
Yes, ma'am.
There used to be signs. There used to be signs in this country that said, no blacks.
Yeah, no Mexicans.
No this, no that, no dogs. Under the dogs, it said no Mexicans.
Yeah.
How is it that we want to continue that type of rhetoric?
That's right.
It is beyond me how we as Mexicans, whose backs have been broken.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we had the Bracero program here in the U.S. and we pick your fruit, the fruit that you eat.
Yeah.
And we are treated like, we're not even treated like second-class citizens. And it's shameful that we have Mexican men who think that Trump is on their side.
I am glad that you went there and that you're passionate. I just want to share one thing that I said before a long time ago when we started doing the big group. Unfortunately, many immigrants come to America, and because think they get a little loaf of bread more than what they got when they were back over there, a little loaf of bread more, and because it's not a lot they're getting. They're not getting a lot. No. They get a loaf of bread and maybe they get a little tin with tea and coffee, and they feel that they have arrived. No, sir, this is not it. There is more, and you have to stand up for what is right. But I'm glad that you spoke truth to power there, Teresa, because if there's any group of people that has been today, you go to a room and you say you're Mexican, immediately you start to see. So if there's one group of people that needs to stand up, it is Mexican. Tricia, go right ahead.
No, I think it's a good segue to the next section.
Right. So our next section is going to be, yes.
And I think that I came up with a term, and maybe I read it and think I came up with it. Forgive me if that's the case. But when looking at what was happening, I thought of the term aspirational voting. And this isn't the only time I've seen it, but I've seen it since I've been here with a lot of immigrants who now believe they're Republicans. And as you vote for who mistakenly you think you can be or want to be. So you vote like if you are a white, rich, old guy.
Yes.
even though you clearly aren't. But it's
Yeah.
aspirational. And when trying to understand why there was an increase in Black male vote, even though when you look at the numbers themselves, it's not really an increase. It's a lesser proportion, but more voted.
Right.
So even that can be confusing. And I must say, we must be careful even with that narrative, because even that narrative can be pitting us against each other when
Yeah.
we need
Yeah.
to really look at it. But anyway,
Yeah.
a lot of it came from this idea that in the case of Hispanic men, machismo,
Right.
Oh,
And
say
plain and
it. Say
simple.
it.
Right.
Plain and
Black men
simple.
too.
Machismo. I want to be the powerful. I can say whatever I want.
That's
Can
right.
grab anybody from the P, and
Yeah.
and no one can tell me anything. So since I admire that in him, that's who I'm gonna vote for.
Yeah.
But Tricia,
Totally.
let me push back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because are you aware that there were a series of Black rappers who actually took pictures with Mr. Joe? So there is an element of Black males,
Oh, I'm not saying there isn't,
right,
Monica.
are
I'm
voting,
not.
but I don't think we're necessarily pitting. I think we're just teed off that they would not see what they're doing. And one of them even said that, oh, my taxes are going to be raising 5%. Forget the Black community. I'm not voting for these people. What I think with the Black men, and this time I'm pulling from Ben Jealous, who is the president of the NAACP, he said the same thing. It's chauvinism. They look at that
Yes.
and they see that, the strong male persona. I want to be that, or this is the thing, is the same.
Macho man.
They literally ended one of the rallies with that song.
Yes.
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
literally ended.
Exactly.
So this isn't even a hidden agenda.
Yes.
Right.
No,
It's
it isn't.
straight
It
out.
is. It is
It's-
out there for everybody
It is straight out.
Yes.
And I'm
Yeah.
not. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that they're trying to lie on us. I'm not saying that at all.
No.
And
No,
there are
no,
very
no.
prominent Black men who
Yeah.
are now. When my sons told me Saturday that Biden had won, 2 or 3 statements after that was this: do you know who you do not want to be today, Mom? I said, who? Ice Cube, 50, or who was the other one? Whoever the other one was.
Little Wayne. Little Wayne.
Lil Wayne. And he said, they said, you know why? I said, why? Because they put themselves out there and
Yeah.
they didn't even win.
That's right. They did.
Yeah.
They did.
It wasn't even profitable to them.
And Kanye,
Yeah.
let's not forget.
Yeah. No, but Kanye at least got his name on a ballot. These people just sold themselves for free.
Listen, no.
Another one. Another circle said, would you take Ben Carson back
Oh,
in
mercy.
your community if he said sorry? And I said, mm-mm. And everybody in the community said, no.
He's not going to say sorry.
Oh, no, but I know he's not. But what I'm saying is, the point I'm trying to bring to this part is, now they're rejected by all communities.
Right.
Remember that
Correct.
saying in Spanish,
Right.
el perro de las dos tortas?
Yes.
You're in
Se
between the
queda.
two, so you end up with none.
Right.
The other
Nothing.
saying,
Exactly.
sin chicha ni limonada. You're playing. Since you cannot choose a side, and you're choosing the wrong side, that side is never going to be with you.
So
Yeah.
I am wondering, Felicia, is
Mhm.
it really, because I'm thinking of the case of the rappers, is it really that we're going to learn our lessons? Are we still going to go out there and buy the music and make them richer? I wish that we would have that. We would be wise enough to say, listen, you didn't care about us, so we don't care about you. But I don't know if that is the case. I don't even know if we think that way.
I don't know
But-
if the ones who think are buying the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just think that as this sister just said, it's identity issues.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you're trying to, it's a false identity issue. And again, Trisha,
Definitely.
your term is wonderful. It's aspirational voting because they're aspiring to do this. And I was saying the parallel between the Latino and the Black vote, and especially when it comes to male, is that they're looking at it from what they want to be,
Yes.
not about
Mhm.
what the issue is. And not that we're chauvinistic on this show in any manner, but when you look at it, men are always taught in most instances to be the aggressor. They go out, even if they're in families. It's I'm gonna go out and I have to do this because this is what I have to do as a man. Women will look from a different perspective. And so I think that what's happening in both of those communities, because I can only speak maybe to those two communities, but that this is what's happening. It's just we're going to go out because this is what we want. This is what we believe. And it may hurt a few people, but look, we're going to stick with this and not look at the
Mhm.
real reasons behind why they're doing what they're doing. And unfortunately, this has been going on throughout.
And
You
we'll
know, I'm going to go
continue.
back. Her story. It's been going on forever because you identify. That's why primarily Black people were Republicans in this country before we were Democrats, because they said, hey, if you do this for me, I will vote for you. And so this is the same thing. They're thinking about taxes and fame, and a lot of them were put under the gun because they're owned by their record labels. And so that was a whole new issue. They're slaves in and of themselves. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's just a lot that goes on.
But look,
It's going to take a lot of education on our part, but more so awareness, making people aware that
Mhm.
it's not just okay. So now we have the vote, but it's also your choices,
look at the difference
Yeah.
between the NBA,
right?
And
Totally,
the
the
NFL.
NBA players,
totally,
and the music industry.
right.
Mhm.
The NBA players said this is not happening
Mhm.
because we still suffer. And when they said the reason why we're not going to stand up, the reason why we're going to fight for the ability to voice our concerns is because the minute we step out of this arena, when we're making you money and entertaining you, we're
Right.
just another Black dude in the wrong neighborhood. And
Yeah,
that is the
exactly.
reason
And their
why
lives are at risk. Uh-huh.
that, and look at how many in the entertainment industry took that same stand. I'm waiting.
No,
Mhm.
I'm
and
waiting.
there
It
was
was a,
Yeah.
it
leadership.
was,
There's no leadership in the entertainment
well,
world.
that's what
Right.
I
And
mean.
no
It was a
union, no
totally
together.
different. One of our friends pointed out today on social media that there's only one city with a major NBA team that voted majority Trump.
Hmm,
Mm.
hmm.
They went
What?
out, yes, they went out, they put their stadiums up for as voting polling places. They went out and energized the community. They were careful about the whole coronavirus. It was like Tikan is saying, a totally different way of
What
thinking
team was
about
this?
yourself. What you see in screening right there, a totally different way of thinking about themselves, the importance of health, the importance of professionalism, how they look on and off the court. You have your exceptions in any of those fields,
Right,
but
right.
in general, when we're looking at it, and you could tell the difference in the way that they talked about this election and the way they talked about the pandemic and the results that came about because of what they did.
Yeah, I think Tika Ann's point supports what you're saying.
Yes.
And different exposure, different socialization, different identity. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But our young people listen to a lot of these music, So
Yes.
there is still awareness that needs to be brought. But let's go to our point here because we want to make sure that we're keeping within.
Oh, before we move, I just want to say, I was really shocked to find out that so many Latino men, had really betrayed their communities and voted for Trump. My husband shared a personal story from work where they were talking about, Trump this, Trump that, and my husband was just quiet, just quiet, didn't say anything. And they turned to him and when he heard them say, "I hope that they, that they get rid of the 15th Amendment so in case, Biden, dies, that Kamala won't become president, because, because they don't want a woman running the show. When he shared that with me, and they turned around and they're like, oh, you're not with Trump, right? Because he would be quiet. He didn't say anything. He says, everything you guys believe, I believe the opposite. That's all he said to them, But when he shared that with me, it's so shocking. It's shocking to know that there's so much hate for women in the Latino community, and it's like beyond it. This all has to do with this religious rhetoric that you have. We talked about that in other pink rooms, where you have men in Latino countries, in Hispanic countries, that worship a woman, right? They worship their Virgin of Fatima, their Virgin of Guadalupe. There's all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they turn around and they hate the women and beat on them and rape them, and there's a problem there with the ideology in the way these countries are educating their men, and I think that it has done such a disservice to us, especially at this point in this country where, and these men, I'm sure, have daughters, I'm sure they have daughters, and it is such an ignorant stance to take, to think that your daughter will do well in this country,
right,
when men continue to think the way you do.
But there's a difference.
Let's dig a little bit deeper there. Go ahead, Christian.
There's a difference. So number one, the virgins they worship are unreal women. They're not real women.
Correct.
They're not real women. They're virgins, forever young. Never made a mistake in their life. So those women aren't real women. Then they buck up, like we say. They buck up onto real women.
Yep.
They don't know what to do with them. Number two, their daughters will never be their superiors.
Yeah.
Their daughters will always be under them as their father. So they never have to be accountable to the daughters. They never have to be subservient to the daughters. They never have to listen to what the daughters have to say. So they're also virginal.
Right.
It's also a different type of relationship. The problem is not just the fact that Kamala is a woman. The problem is that it's a woman who would be their boss, supervisor, superior.
There we go.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I dare say that in many respects, my brethren are exactly the same way and have the same problem.
So this is where we're coming to now, discussing the classic Christian versus the conservative Christian, and how appalled we have been that people who call themselves Christians are actually aligning themselves with lies, with indecency, with sexual harassment and abuse, with stealing, with inequity, but yet still they call it murder of people, yet still they call themselves Christians. And I think that is linked also with that machismo and chauvinism, because the patriarchy in the church allows these men to feel that they're in all their right and power to view women and treat women this way.
I'm not voting for someone's character. If I was looking for a pastor in my church, then I would care about their character. I'm voting for who can run this country. And this country means economy. So I don't care about his values. Haven't you heard what Biden did, how he got jailed? I don't care about his values. What I care about is how economical sound this country is. And that is how you divorce what you believe in with your self-interest, which at the end of the day is the problem.
And
this election and the pandemic has been a conflict between self-centeredness and solidarity.
There you go.
You vote for self-centeredness when you vote based on what you want for yourself. Call it Lil Wayne, or call it the white conservative Christian who says gay people shouldn't be allowed to go have a baker bake their cake. My interest in the pandemic, my freedom not to wear a mask, to go where I want to, is more important than your need. And at the core, it's the same issue.
But
Same issue.
the hypocrisy of it all is that we are also proponents of a gospel where you love your neighbor as yourself. And
No,
I know that they don't see it. I'm just speaking to the hypocrisy. I know that they don't see it.
I haven't heard that talked about in the past 4 years, Norca.
I hear it, but I'm speaking to the hypocrisy of it all. We talk about loving our neighbors as ourselves, or we should believe that. That's part of our gospel, because the gospel is good news, right, for salvation. We talk about
see what you just said, though. See what you just said.
A God
good news for salvation.
Exactly, a God who redeems, a God who stoops low and looks high. The hypocrisy of how we see, okay, I'm voting for my economy or my economical interest, as opposed to what I believe in, my moral values, which there's always that disconnect, because at the same time you don't believe in abortion, but you believe in it's okay to kill people on the street. The hypocrisy is where we are losing people, and that is why people want no part of us, because it's like, wait, you're saying this, but you're doing this, and then you do this, and then you say this. And then you have a book and you call it the Bible, and this book says this, but then you do the other thing. We are not in a good place. Those of us who are Christians, we're not in a good place, because hypocrisy has taken over everything that we do and say.
Yeah. And I think here in America, rather than it being the classic Christian, it's really about the authentic Christian.
Well,
I really think it's more about the authentic, the true Christian who values exactly what God designed a Christian to be and what Christianity should be all about. And it's not just a conservative Christian, but it's also the patriotic conservative Christian when you're talking about America, because it's standing up to and mixing Christianity into what it means to be an American. And to be patriotic and to be a patriotic white male American.
Right.
So in my view, it's more about that authentic Christian, no matter what color you are.
Yes.
Versus this patriotic, misogynistic, patriarchal, all of the above Christian.
Right.
And when you see that, that's where that divide is. And it does fall into voting in your interests. And those particular interests fall under that particular Christianity, form of what they consider Christianity, versus the authentic Christian who's doing exactly according to the will of God.
Yeah.
So when they say that they voted for Trump once and voted for Trump again because he delivered on what he promised, what he promised was power. He promised to elect Supreme Court judges that would fight for their interests. He promised that he would make things illegal that they want illegal. And he delivered on those promises.
Yes. And you know what?
He didn't run on a Christian agenda. He never promised that he would open the borders and be kind to the widow and not make orphans by killing their fathers. And he never promised that.
No.
What he promised, he delivered. So why not vote for him again?
Look, one of the things that I clearly knew is that meanwhile, he did not put another Supreme Court judge, conservative Supreme Court judge, on the bench. He was going to continue. He would have won this election because they would have done whatever needed to happen to make sure that he was still in power another 4 years until that Supreme Court looked like they wanted to. Since it happened right before election, they don't need him anymore. The powers of be do not need him anymore. So this is why he's just, you know what? We're not even going to pay attention to your crying and kicking over there, because you know what? The Republican Party has what they want. and they do not need Trump anymore.
Wait, Teresa, but
So-
I want to
Yes.
put back on that.
You need to keep fighting. It's not over.
You don't know. Remember that there's that concession speech that needs to be given.
It
And
won't happen, Norca.
exactly. And once that doesn't happen,
But
trouble.
Republicans are already separating themselves from him. They're it's already happening.
He needs to give that concession speech.
Oh no, totally
won't
agree.
give it.
I'm just saying.
If
My
that
point is
speech
that
doesn't
he
happen,
is no longer needed, and
Right.
they're not gonna fight for him. They're not going to,
Listen,
and I think that's where that's why he hasn't come out, because he's devastated, because he's like, what happened, right? I gave him everything they wanted, exactly.
I'm saying, Teresa, I do not trust. I do not trust. I want to have a little bit, I still feel if that concession speech doesn't come up, and we could put it, there's a great video Van Jones made explaining that.
Oh, I saw. But I agree.
We're hanging by a thread. But anyway,
but I also,
because go ahead.
Real quick. I also think that it is the same Supreme Court who, back in an era when we were given the right to vote as people of color, did not look anything like this.
That's right.
And so I have to have hope and faith, and want to consider myself an authentic Christian, that these same people can do those exact same things. That representation of the Supreme Court back when was typically all white male who granted the rights to vote, etc., etc. And we see the Supreme Court has already done some pushback on a lot of his issues that have come forward. So the belief is that they're supposed to not be, it's supposed to be partisan. We know they have views.
Different Supreme Court. It was RBG. I still don't want us to be too trustful.
I'm not going to be too trustful, but I'm just saying, if you look at an era when America was never even ready for where we are, you had Supreme Court justices who said,
it took the walking on the streets, took the blood. Remember, it didn't come that easy.
It didn't come that easy, and this is a different era, and I'm saying I don't trust it, but I believe that just like this democratic process and the democracy was allowed to roll the way it's supposed to roll, the vice president and the vice president-elect are where they are, and I think that still does exist. I'm not extremely hopeful, but I do know that if we're going to put in the views about the Christianity and all, that we who are believers in Christ or who are Christians should know that there is a level of democracy that still has to exist in that Supreme Court, and that's the work that we have to do.
And there you go, Sean, that there might be work that just voting might not have been enough, and we need to be open to the idea that we may have to still get up and pronounce ourselves, because it's not being prepared, and there's a constitution. So we cannot just say, okay, the vote, because there's more. There's more that we may have to do, but we pray that we don't. But anyway, let's go to this so that we can start going down. The Shoulders of Shirley Chisholm. Shonda, tell us a little bit about her.
Yes, and I think just to the note on how we were ending, I mean, here's this woman who was born in Bed-Stuy, New York, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York. Shout out to all my Brooklyn people. And she has her heritages of the West Indies, of immigrant family. And here she was the first woman and the first Black woman to get in Congress in 1968. And a few years later, she was the first to run for a president. And she had 151 of those electoral.
Right, she did. Denise posted the Van Jones link. I hope everyone watches it. Shonda, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just lost you for a moment, tech issues. So she had 151 electoral votes. And what was the effect? The effect was that people got out there and they voted for her to be that first person, but she was overlooked by the same media who gets overlooked and talked about now. And the political parties did not respect her or even acknowledge that erasure erasure of a woman in history. And what did it do? It launched, and she said herself, I may not be able to do this, but I'm setting like a standard so that our future, and here we are 50 years later,
Yes.
and we have a vice president elect who's a woman of color, right? And so was
Yes.
all of this worth it? And I'm making it really quick. It was definitely worth it. Why? Because this lady was one of the founders of the Congressional Black
Right.
Caucus,
Yes.
one of the most powerful organizations
Yep.
within the politics of America, right? And again, being one of the first in Congress here in America, in New York City, there's a system called the City University of New York. She helped founded a department or
Program.
a program where students would have the opportunity who white would not normally have the opportunity to go on to pursue an education to be able to do exactly what she was representing. Education, get out here, we can do this, your voice counts, you matter, Black Lives Matter, and Black women matter. And
You
I
know-
know we're moving quickly through our
Right.
segments.
You know something that is interesting with Shirley Chisholm? I want to go back further and say that there would not be a Barack Obama if it wasn't for her.
Absolutely.
Period.
She
Yes.
opened that door. And I work for the program. I'm actually one of the directors of the program that Shonda is talking about. And there are a couple of things that I
Wow.
find really interesting. I always say with pride, I am humbled by the fact that I can work for a program that allows young people who did not have the opportunity, who lived in poor neighborhoods, but wanted to come to college, and allows them the opportunity not only to come to college with financial aid, but that we walk them through the process because they're the first generation in their families. Now, when that program started, it was initiated for Blacks and Puerto Ricans. The demographics of the program have changed.
Wow.
Which we're concerned about, and we actually wrote a Black Lives Matter statement about we need to see more Black youth. This is New York. Why aren't there Black youths in the program? All right? That's one. The second thing that is problematic to me all the time is that Shirley Chisholm was not only in the room because they confronted a mayor in New York, and they basically said to him, if you don't give us this, we're pulling all the Black votes. You will not be able to be in position. She was in the room along with Percy Sutton, Baxter Patterson. Yet still, she was the architect of it. She was the one who said, listen, let's go to his hotel room. Let's gang up on him in the hotel room. Let's sit on the floor. Let's tell him we're not leaving. Yet still, her name does not appear in our program. So it is on me and people like us to constantly bring it to the table that, hey, this program, yes, it was started by these other guys, but she was the architect of it all. The erasure.
Yeah.
The erasure. Some people didn't even know that she was. I'm like, yes, she was the architect. She was the one because she was a teacher. She was the one who said, let's use these two laws and let's get Black and brown young people into college. And she was the architect of it all. Never a mention, no program after her name, but the other guys have programs with their names on it.
Look, this sister was unbought and unbossed. That's exactly who she is. And exactly. And she said, if there's not room at the table for you or a seat at the table, bring your own chair, because she knew what her intention, what her purpose was. Look, the men who talk about her, all respects is given to her. Like you said, if it were not for her, there would not be a Barack Obama. This sister never held back on her tongue. She knew how to, as they say, code switch. She knew what she needed to do and how. She was groomed. She started in a local community in Brooklyn, being involved and engaged with families, and she continued to pursue and pursue and pursue. And look at who gets a lot of recognition because of our vice president-elect, who is now Kamala Harris, and it's because of people like her that have paved the way.
Absolutely.
Yes. And it is my privilege to speak of one of the eldest activists that is still living, Dolores Huerta, at 90 years old.
Yes.
90 years old, still is active, pushing for the voices of those who, are disenfranchised. She started her work, of course, famously with United Farm Workers alongside Cesar Chavez. She did a lot of the community organizing, and it's amazing. Again, the erasure, as you were saying, Shonda, this woman was, pivotal in all of the work that was done. But who was at the forefront? The men, of course. And she talks about that. There is a documentary, Dolores, that was out in 2017, chronicling her life. The fact that this is a woman who had 11 children. 11 children. And she has changed the lives of the agricultural workers in this country. People who, didn't even have bathrooms while they were working and picking our fruit. She and the rest of, the United Farm Workers were part of this whole change. But Dolores Huerta to this day has been a thriving force in finding, in raising the voice of those who unfortunately continue to be silenced in this country. It's admirable that she was behind Hillary's campaign, really pushing for Hillary. Right. But when she and Obama were competing against each other, and Obama so graciously thanked her for that slogan of si se puede, yes we can, was something that came out of Dolores's knowledge and soul, because she was being told by many people in Arizona, we just, no podemos, no se va a poder, we can't do it here. What you guys are doing in California, we can't do it here. We'll go to jail. And she said to them, si se puede. And to this day, it continues to be the rallying cry for pushing forward the rights of those who have been silenced by the powers and the economy that doesn't recognize that the economy functions because you have people who work it, and people who work it for minimum amount of of wages, barely survivable, and they are still putting in their best effort, working. There's a movie called A Day Without Mexicans, and it really speaks to the vitality that this group of people, and we say Mexicans because it is one of the largest countries that that in here in the U.S. has immigrants. However, we do know that there are Salvadorians and Hondurans, Hondureños, and everybody else. But it is vital that we understand that the Hispanic community, the Latino community, is a force that will be for good if we start to believe that we are valuable to this country. And I think that is one of the things that I'm passionate about, that those men and women who work the fields, who work the factories, who work in those hotels where they're paid menial wages, for keeping, everything for, those women who raise the children of the working mothers. I was a working mother, just up to recently, and I had other women help me raise my kids, women that I cannot be more than, I owe part of my life to them because they were able to help me get through my, part of my life that I was going through. And we should be thanking these human beings for who they are and for really giving us, the foundation for a healthy economy. And thank you, Dolores, for everything you do.
Yeah.
So Simone Sanders, I think something else that I've learned in this season is that you do not need to be old to be inspirational.
That's right.
And Simone Sanders is an example of a young woman who has decided from a very young age that who she wanted to be and has occupied that space. She is someone who has always looked to do things that are far beyond her age or experience and said, I can do this. I'm going to go for it. And she has been instrumental in getting the younger generation, getting Black voters, getting professional women and transitioning them from the Bernie Sanders camp successfully to the Biden Harris camp.
Right.
And that cannot be underestimated at all. It cannot be underestimated because Biden had an uphill climb barefoot on a rocky hill.
Yep.
Because so many of the progressive Democrats said, if it's not Bernie, I'm not voting. And that was a real danger. And it was because of her stepping in and Biden being wise enough to listen to the Black women in his camp telling him, you cannot move forward without being very intentional and visible about what Black women mean to this party, that having her be his senior campaign organizer has brought what we're seeing today. So it is not only important to give lip service. He had to take actions that included having several options as Black women in the finalists for being vice president. So it wasn't only Kamala. She was the one that got it, but there were several others on the list, including one that we're talking about after her, that he had to intentionally say, they're valuable. They're the ones that are going to make this victory happen. And if you have not heard about her before, you will hear about her again. And just like Kamala said, when she accepted that I may be the first one, but I won't be the last.
Yeah.
This will not be the last time we hear from Simone Sanders.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So we want to talk a little bit about Stacey Abrams. This woman has my admiration. This woman has my respect. As Tricia said, she was on the slate to become vice president. But I think that the way everything aligned itself, this was her moment to do exactly what she did. She is credited for bringing almost 1 million new voters, voters to the party. She was the one who kept assuring, listen, Georgia will turn. There's more blue here than what is being shown on the news. And they respected her enough to hold on and say, we know we have a path forward. We know we will be victorious. It was her giving them this assurance. She has a TED Talk out. And the beautiful thing about Stacey Abrams is that she has experienced a lot of setbacks, but she has not allowed them to set her out. So we all know that gubernatorial race that she ran, it was basically the suppression of the vote. There was a lot of cheating going on there. She tried hard. She still did not get it, had to concede, right? And she said that there are 3 things. She has a TED Talk, and I would recommend anyone to watch it. She said there are 3 questions that she always asks herself. What do I want? Why do I want it? What do I need to get it? And that these 3 questions are really the fuel that moves her to get things done. I saw an old video of her when she was 20-something years old. She had long braids. And here was she on the Capitol stairs talking about, you need to bring young people under the tent. We're ready to lead. We're ready to lead for equity and for justice. And I said, even at that age, she already saw where she was going to go. But so the genius of Stacey Abrams, if you've listened to her, the woman is a genius. Like, this is someone that you just want to sit and listen to because she spews so much wisdom. She's very strategic. I know some people, there was a clip people were showing, oh my goodness, you saw that Joe didn't acknowledge that he wanted her for VP. This was all strategically prepared. Yeah. He knew what he was going for, and he knew exactly what her role was going to be. And we're looking forward to see how she becomes a member of that cabinet. Now, I want to mention, along with Stacey Abrams, we didn't bring the photos of all these ladies, but there's so many Black women who are part of making this happen, right? So Stacey Abrams with her organizing and her mobilizing and her genius in all those suburb areas. But I want to mention the list of Black women like Michelle Obama. Straight up in your face, challenge the current president. He never uttered a word against her.
Could not.
He never has. He never will. And he never will. That is one Black woman that he does not ever challenge. So I want to acknowledge she stood in her power and she said what she had to say. People are always like, oh my goodness, we've never heard a first lady. She had to do it and she did it. I want to mention Major Keisha Lance Bottoms from Atlanta, who mobilized her city, worked with Stacey Abrams, and worked with Simone to mobilize her city. But I want to mention a list of Black women that maybe you have seen them on TV, don't know. And these women have been particularly pressured under this administration. They've been called nasty. They've been called stupid. They've been told that they ask stupid questions. Publicly, all these women, and they have remained poised. They have remained steadfast. I don't know how they do it. They continue to ask their question as if I didn't even hear what you said, sir, but this is what I want you to answer. Abby Phillips on CNN, who's been told, hey, you ask stupid questions. She's from Trinidad, her Trinidadian roots. Political analyst on CNN with a Harvard graduate, has been excellent, has been able to speak truth to power from that vantage point, said something that still resonates with me. The Trump campaign got started with that whole birther movement, and to see that it's a Black woman now is actually part of the campaign that's going to get him out of the White House. Amish Alcindor, I don't know how she do it. Haitian roots, Haitian parents from Florida. I mean, she is indefatigable. She is in his face. He insults her every time he sees her. She doesn't blink. She's still asking the question. Joy Reid with her analysis on MSNBC. Her father's from mother is
she's my girl. She's my girl.
Father from Congo, mother from Guyana. She is analytical. April Ryan, native of Baltimore, targeted very early on. Nobody stood up for her when he was attacking her. Ilia Calderon from Univision. She's Afro-Colombian. Risked her life to interview KKK and almost got out of there without, they almost were going to kill her. Kristen Wall, what can we say about the lady, the one who moderated the presidential debate, held it down, was respectful, but did not back down, kept checking.
Held it down and moved it along.
All these journalists, to me, they risk their mental health, they risk their professions to be out there facing the terror and still getting it done. So we wanted to just say their names in acknowledgement. Along with Stacey Abrams, these women are brilliant. We love them. We honor them for what they have brought to the table.
Heroes.
Yes.
Harris's speech. We kind of Teresa's going to start reading parts of the speech, and we're going to end with that. There's several points that we feel that we want to bring forth to you, and we want to share with you today. So we took excerpts from her speech.
Yes. Give me a second. All the women who have worked to secure and protect the right to vote for over a century, 100 years ago with the 19th Amendment, which is so fitting, right? 55 years ago with the Voting Rights Act, and now in 2020 with a new generation of women in our country who cast their ballots and continued their fight for the fundamental right to vote and be heard.
And what a testament it is to Joe's character that he had the audacity to break one of the most substantial barriers that exist in our country and select a woman as his vice president. And while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
And to the woman most responsible for my presence here today, my mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris, who is always in our hearts. When she came here from India at the age of 19, she maybe didn't quite imagine this moment, But she believes so deeply in an America where a moment like this is possible. And so I am thinking about her and about the generations of women, Black women, Asian, white, Latina, Native American women, who throughout our nation's history have paved the way for this moment tonight.
Every little girl that's watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities.
Dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others may not. Powerful words from our um, Vice
Vice
President,
President elect.
Madam Vice President, Madam elect, whatever. I'm mixing it up. All of those and more. All of those and a bag of potato chips and more.
Yes.
Kamala Harris, we are so incredibly proud. We acknowledge that there's still work to do in America. We're not there.
Yes.
And all these lessons that we shared with you today, or divisions, our not understanding our history, our identity issues, there's still a lot of work to be done. But we are willing to put our little part, as we do here. And we ask that everyone be willing to do their own part. Read more, question, ask. Try to pull people together instead of trying to pull people apart. And I don't know, I'm going to ask each one of my co-hosts if there's one thing that you would like people to take away in this idea of we need to heal. What do we need to do to heal America?
I think one of the most important things that we need to realize is that this is a time to become part of the conversation. One of the things that Dolores Huerta has always pushed for and continues to push is that we become involved at every level of government, school boards, city councils, everywhere that your voice can be heard. If you are not part of the conversation, then we're not moving forward. And this is, I think, one of the things that we need to do in order to heal. We need to talk, we need to communicate. That's the communication is key. We need to be able to express our ideas. If not, we gloat and we get into our little corners and feel attacked. We need to all come together to the table and have our ideas heard.
And I think in a note to Teresa's point about being involved, our civic duty is our responsibility, and we should be held accountable for our civic duty. And that, yes, every life matters, but Black and Brown voices do matter, and we need to be there, and we need to have respect, America, for the people who built this country.
Right.
I think that we may feel erroneously that healing can only come for a quiet life. And speaking as a public health physician, you have to go through the pain to be able to heal. You have to. You can't just shy away from stepping onto that foot that hurts. You can't just eat on one side of your mouth. You can't just look through life with one eye and believe that that's going to bring healing, because you do not want to offend or cause pain. For us to be able to heal, we need to go through it. We need to have, and I think we are all echoing this idea, we need to sit through and be brave enough to have the courageous conversations in our circle,
Right.
Wherever platform we have, to use it, because healing can't come until we're able to root out what's rotting. Because if we don't, we'll come back to this place again and again and again.
Right. Thank you so much. I think they're such beautiful and powerful thoughts. I think that for me, there needs to be an acknowledgement. There needs to be an acknowledgement that people suffer, that people have been erased, that people do work and they're not acknowledged for that people are hurting, that we all need healing. We're not ever going to be able to confront and heal if we don't acknowledge that there is a problem. So I think we need to start by acknowledging that, listen, we're not perfect. We're not there. We're working towards that union, that perfect union that is written in our Constitution, but we're not there yet. And until that comes, let's acknowledge so that the healing can take place. We want to thank everyone who's been with us today, all our faithful viewers. You could have been watching anything else, but you took the time. We want to thank you so much for being with us once again. And we say to you until next time.
And we'll see you next time in the Pink Room.
The Pink Room is a produced resource of For Real Women International, Inc., a non-profit organization with headquarters in New York and affiliates in the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean. The views expressed here by hostesses and guests do not necessarily represent the philosophy of For Real Women International, its affiliates, members, and board of directors.